Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. Today we are having one of our candidate shows, and I think I've already told you that I have about 50 candidates lined up for interviews. So if you want to know about your candidate, just stay tuned. Joining me today is Guy Page, who is going to help me co-host. Both of our normal co-hosts are in, what is it called? Seclusion.
Quarantine.
Great. Anyway, Guy, take a second to talk about yourself and all your publications and how we can sign up.
Well, I live in Berlin. I'm a Colchester native, and I publish 3 different publications. Publish an actual newspaper, newspaper, the thing you hold in your hand,
Dying art.
called the Chronicle of the Vermont State House, and that comes out when the legislature is in session, and it's really just about what's happening in the State House. And I also publish every day. I find the 10 most interesting news stories in Vermont and put them on something called Vermont Water Cooler. And it's really sort of like a Drudge Report for Vermont, where you can read, get a quick idea of what the story's about, read the link, and then comment on it. It's really one of the last comment sections that's available in Vermont.
Vermont Digger stopped the comment section.
And VPR and 7 days. It's all gone. Yeah. So BT Water Cooler, we hope will be filling in the gap there. But the main thing I do is a daily online newspaper called Vermont Daily. And that's where I write and have other people write on interesting issues of the day from a probably somewhat conservative perspective, most would say. But on the other hand, there's not a whole lot of that going around in Vermont. No. So if anyone wants to subscribe, it's www.vermontdailychronicle.com.
Right, and speaking of conservative, we have joining us today Ericka Redic, who has been here before. Welcome, Ericka.
Thank you.
She is a conservative running for the Senate in Chittenden County.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you've been on the show before, so
yeah.
They must know you. There's a test. Just tell us a little bit for our viewers.
Sure. My name is Ericka Redic. I am a native Vermonter. I was actually born in Burlington, raised in Milton, graduated high school from BFA St. Albans, and also Champlain College. So I really spent most of my life here, and I'm an accountant. So you'll hear me talk a lot about things in reference to economics and finance and balance sheets and things like that. And I'm married to a lovely, wonderful man. I call him Saint Benjamin. I'm just so blessed, really, honestly. I have the best husband in the world that I could hope for.
Excellent. Well, we'll get to meet him in another show, so stay tuned, people. So do you want to lead us off, Guy?
Sure. So what are your key priorities as you go to the legislature and as you're talking about with your constituents? What are your main priorities?
Well, the 3 areas that I highlight on my website are the economy, education, and public safety. Mm-hmm. And the reason I focus on those 3 areas is because I think they're kind of the basis or the foundation for so many things that we find important here in Vermont or problems that we're struggling with. So as an example, the economy. We are really going to be struggling as we come out of COVID, considering, what is it, a third of our economy at least is dependent on hospitality.
Tourism.
Right? Hospitality and tourism. So we've lost all of that sales, all of that meals and use and all these taxes, right? So we're going to have a real budget shortfall. And in order to preserve any of the services that we offer, we're going to have to generate revenue. And that means opening up the economy. It means attracting businesses to come here so that they will bring their economic activity and jobs, good paying jobs.
That would be good.
Keep the youth here, keep people here, keep that income coming in. That's how we pay for our services. We've got to address education. That's a big one, right? And that also relates to our money. Many Vermonters don't realize that 75% of our property tax comes from property taxes, right? A lot of people know that. But we also fund education through sales tax, use tax, the lottery, and all of these other areas that, again, have taken this huge hit. How are we going to fund our schools? Act 46 was supposed
Love
to be
it.
this savior of all of our problems, and it's only created an even bigger boondoggle in our education. And then public safety, of course, is primary. We have an opioid epidemic here. We had 2 sex trafficking rings, human trafficking rings broken up in Burlington in the last 18 months. Yeah, I mean, when I talk about public safety, so many people don't realize the things that are going on behind the scenes because we have a relatively safe home here in Vermont, right? You're not walking down the street expecting to get mugged or carjacked, right? So a lot of people, if they're not paying attention to the news like we are every single day, they don't know. They don't know that this stuff is happening. And so we have to look at what and really discover what are the roots of the problems that we're facing. And I see a lot of our current legislators trying to put Band-Aids or address the symptoms of the root causes, right? So even if we look at the opioid crisis and we say, okay, we're gonna do Suboxone and we're needle exchanges and try to reduce the stigma, okay, that's cool, that's great. But what's the underlying cause of the opioid epidemic? Well, definitely mental health problems. Okay, so we know mental health stuff is an issue. Okay, well, what are some of the roots of mental health issues? Well, let's think. 30% of suicides are related to lack of jobs, hopelessness for economic ability to take care of your family and things like that. Well, you know what you can do about that?
Get a job.
And if we boost the economy, excuse me, so if we work on the economy, we attract businesses here, we make sure everybody has a way to take care of their family, then all of these other underlying issues start to get resolved. And so that's, for me, what I always say is these are the broad strokes, right? Economy, education, public safety. But we got to really dig into what the root causes are. And that's what I hope to do.
Good for you. I love all of those priorities. So when you get to the legislature, have you thought about what you'd like to see happen that very first? Because as a newbie, it's a little hard to get your feet wet and to get into the swing of things. And they always expect us as freshmen to sort of hold back a little bit, but I don't think you will. So what would you, I mean, given where we are, and I think you've hit on the 2022 will be a really bad financial year.
Yes.
Not so much this year, because they've got money from last year that they can finagle a little bit, but 22 will be bad.
Yeah.
So even the committee too, that's a big important decision. Hoping, what are you thinking about to get on the committees?
Okay, so those are 2 questions.
Yeah, right.
I'll tackle
Right, so-
one
okay.
first. Committees, economic development, housing, and government.
Good.
What's
Operations.
Government ops.
government ops is a separate one, though. I think it's economic development, housing, and something. That's directly all of.
Well, housing and military affairs, is that the one? That's not, you
Of
wouldn't
course,
want
of
that.
course, she would be in the Senate, so
Oh,
government operations.
general
General,
affairs,
right,
general
general
affairs.
affairs, right,
That's what it
that's
is,
right,
general
right.
affairs. Because that's, I mean, we can do film incentives. This is one of the things.
Right.
We can do film incentives here. This is an easy thing that we can offer tax breaks to film companies to come here and utilize our beautiful landscape. That brings all kinds of economic activity to the state and costs us nothing to set up, except for maybe some advertising dollars. We've got colleges who graduate students with degrees to create games and all this other kind of stuff. Why don't we attract companies like EA Sports to come here? Burlington has Burlington Telecom. We've got fiber for any kind of high-tech job and industry we want to bring here. That's a way that we attract good jobs and put to work the people that were graduating from our colleges that we're spending all this money on.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's one of the committee's appropriations, of course, is a big one. I really want to see that promise of a universal chart of accounts where we start to actually be able to see what we're spending our money on,
Wow.
that people will actually be able to understand where our money is going. So they can't hide all of the debts that we know are there, but are sort of, mysteriously fogged out by the notes to the financial statements. I have been an accountant for 20 years. And when I've gotten the audited financial statements for the state, or when I've tried to review them for the state or the city, I mean, there are accounts, I'm like, I've never heard of an account called that before. What is this? And I asked the auditors when they did their presentation, because the city, you can ask the city, but then they never make time or call you back to answer your questions or ever respond. But anyway, I asked the auditors, what is this account? And they were like, well, we're not allowed to talk to the public about anything. And I was like, okay. And then you read the notes to the financial statements. So what people don't know in accounting for audited financial statements. So you get your balance sheet, your income statement, there's a bunch of numbers, blah, blah, blah. Well, then at the end, you have what are called the notes to the financial statements. And this is where the auditors put any information that is troublesome or is going to come up in the future that you need to know that you wouldn't see just from reading the numbers. This company is not a going concern because they're in litigation over this. There's blah, 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 blah. They've consistently gotten bad marks from the auditors in the notes to the financial statements, but nobody ever reads that stuff.
Right.
Interesting.
And because
there's a bill waiting to be written.
And because they're not accountants and because they're not business people, if you're just a lay person, and this is no cut on our legislators, particularly that are not accountants or business people, this is not a cut on them. But if you don't understand how to read a balance sheet and you don't understand what you're looking at and what it means, how can you make decisions based on it?
Right.
Because they'll come back the following year and ask what you did on those notes. Where are you? I know it's a big thing in Barry City when I worked there. Those notes were like, get this done.
Exactly.
So that next year when they come back, they can write it off their list.
Nope, same notes, year after year after year.
Really?
Lack of transparency, can't understand, this is hidden, need to recategorize,
Interesting. Wonder how many of those notes impacted our losing our half a rating in 2 houses last year.
Absolutely.
That and the pension liability.
Absolutely.
They must read that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and here's the thing. They did the estimated pension liability that we're looking at, the $4.5 billion,
Right.
it was pre-COVID.
Right.
And that was them assuming a 7.5% return.
Reduced from 8, which I thought in itself was ridiculous. Who gets 7?
Nobody.
Right.
Except for my friend that works for the Vermont agency. That guy is really smart. If you guys need advice, holler at me. I will get you a financial advisor. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name on television or not. He's really smart. He might get 7% a year. But the general market, and especially what we're investing in,
Right, exactly.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And to get 7.5%, you're going to be doing risky investments or riskier investments that I don't know about you, but I don't know if I want to risk my teachers' pensions.
Right.
I don't know that I want to risk my police officers' pensions in
Right.
riskier things to try to get a higher yield. I would rather be honest and realistic, right? So what is that expression? You want to set the bar low, set the expectations low, so that if you do it
Right, you
well,
look great.
Exactly, right? So let's be realistic about what we can actually do, and then if we do better, well, then now we've got a trust fund for the future. But why would you lie to Vermonters and tell them that you can do something that is very clearly not
Right.
real,
Yeah.
and continue to make promises that you cannot keep?
We've had several shows on the pension here because it's a big concern to us. The 4.5, that's for people, it's teachers, state employees, both pension and healthcare all rolled into that 4.5. The healthcare may not be as bad as it appears because we pay as we go, so that may be a little less frightening, but the amount of pension and for teachers and state employees, it's a big thing, and I don't know how they can put a plan together based on the 7.4 or whatever.
Well, and
It's just who does that? Yes.
you said something very important, Pat.
Oh, could you write that down? Is that
They put a plan together without knowing the numbers.
right? Oh,
Or you said something to that effect.
yeah. Well, they lowered it to 7 and nobody gets it. How can you write a plan on that?
How can you write a plan on anything when you
Right.
don't actually have the
Right.
numbers?
Right.
When you're not
Right.
looking at, this is what I keep coming back to, why are we making plans based on things that are not real, that we cannot prove, or we haven't dug in to find what the root of the problem is?
The short answer to that, Ericka, is that we have no stockholders meeting that we're going to need to be accountable to. I
Try
think-
taking my pension away. I'll be at the meeting.
Well.
Because right now I'm retired, so I'm locked into that. They have an obligation, I'm hoping, to pay me. Don't make that face.
But that's the thing, Pat.
don't
I mean,
know.
this is the real question.
Yeah.
We could default on that.
Really?
I have something to add to that.
Okay, please do.
Just today, I wrote a story on women running for office. And one of the really interesting races is the race for state treasurer. Because we have the incumbent, Beth Pierce,
Yep.
who supports a defined benefit for all pensioners, which is
Right.
we guarantee you this amount as a pension. Her challenger on the Republican side, Carolyn Brannigan, is the first candidate that I know of in a long time who is saying no guarantees on the defined benefit. However, we will guarantee the defined contribution.
Right,
So what you put into it will be
right.
guaranteed.
Governor
The
Douglas
outcome
tried
was
that.
up to mortality and investment and everything. Big difference.
And that's what I don't understand, how you can even have a defined benefit plan.
A lot of states don't anymore. They've just wiped
Right.
it out.
When we have a declining population, and when we keep setting up scenarios that are going to create, when we structure our economy and all of our decisions to create a scenario where we are going to be taking in less and less money,
Right.
and there's going to be less and less contributions, you cannot do that.
Oh, sure you can. You can do it by underfunding the pension by $4
Which
billion.
we've done for the last 10 years.
by taking the money that's there that you really shouldn't be taking.
And that's
That's
exactly.
what's happening.
But their theory is that the state government will never go out of business, that we will always have state government, that we will, no, that's the basis of why
Right.
they did this over the last 10
Sure.
years. The state is never going out of business, so they think. But we've lost two houses have knocked our ratings down. A half a point, which is instead
A
of
lot.
A, they
Yeah.
might put it down to A minus, but that's still in the wrong direction.
And
right.
that's hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars over time in
Right.
interest
Right.
that we get charged extra
Right.
on our debt
Yeah,
obligations.
Because our mandatory payment is getting out of sight. And in a couple of years, if this keeps up, I don't think, we're gonna have struggle, and that comes right off the top. Whatever the amount is, it comes off the top of the revenue.
And this is the
Bam.
problem with having a group of legislators
Right.
who have not had to produce anything
Right.
in their
Or be
lives.
held accountable.
And I know that I'm being very hyperbolic right now. Obviously, we have many legislators who have had businesses and create businesses, have employees, and do all of these things. But you have many of our legislators, particularly in the Chittenden County area, that are very wealthy, that have been fortunate to have trust funds and other things where they've been able to run up credit cards
Right.
and been fine with it. They've never had to put payroll on a credit card. They've never been responsible for making sure that someone else puts food on their table. They don't understand the concept of where this money comes from because they haven't had the privilege of creating wealth.
Right. And Guy will attest to this. They don't like small business. They think these people have a profit margin the size of who knows what, when in fact, it is very, very tiny, 1-2% profit margin. They do not live like kings. And they always think they've got money coming from somewhere. We have a little time crunch here, so we
Oh.
need to get to the
Other questions.
to the not necessarily all of the questions, just the ones that.
So one question I have, in this time of seclusion, this pandemic
Yeah.
seclusion, how are you reaching out to your constituents? How are you getting their attention?
Yeah, great question. One of the ways that we are getting in touch with people every Monday night at 7 p.m., we're doing Facebook Live and Instagram Live.
Oh, nice.
So, yes, my political page is called Generally Irritable with
I
Ericka
love it. Isn't that
Redic.
great?
I was told that when I named my page, it should be something so everyone knows what to expect. And you know, I get
And
fired
you
up
are.
about stuff. I get fired up about. I'm passionate. I'm
Yes.
French. Okay. So every Monday,
Oui.
7 o'clock, Instagram, Facebook, Generally Irritable. We are doing legal in-person meetings every Saturday. That'll start next Saturday, September 26th. So our first meet and greet is at Buc-ee's in Heinsberg from 3 to 5. And then it'll be every Saturday from
Great
then on
idea.
around 2 o'clock. There is the events page on Generally Irritable will be updated with locations
Good for
and
you.
all of that stuff.
When I saw that title, I thought, oh my God, how perfect. It's so cool. Not that you're irritable, but you're pretty fired up,
I am.
yeah, which I like.
And it really is. I get the critique a lot. Like, why are you so angry? Why are you so angry? And it's like, because I care.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I care.
You're a true Vermonter, born, raised, and returned. How's that?
And when I see injustice, when I see people being harmed for no reason, our farms are closing down. So we're going to close down all of our farms and do all this stuff for the sake of runoff because farms are polluting the lake. But Burlington isn't responsible for their 3.5 million
Drives
gallons
me
of
nuts.
sewage.
Which we made legal by law.
Ah!
It's in statute. They can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And
It's
Act
legal.
250's supposed reform will be empowering that even more.
Right.
And they say, well, we've got a long-term plan to control this. That's their response.
Yeah, but it's-
We've got a long-term plan.
Yeah. I like putting on Facebook that it's legal. I love the responses. People go completely nuts.
Oh my God.
yeah, it's
This
legal.
is what I'm.
I asked the
this is
governor
what I'm
this
talking
question
about.
on a press conference. What are you going to do about all this runoff? And he says, can I have the agency person come on, please?
Yeah, right.
And the agency person said, well, don't worry about it. All these municipalities have committed to long-term plans to mitigate their septic
They've
overflow.
committed to building a stupid steel frame of the Moran plant.
Oh, that's what they're going to use that
Yes,
for?
they're going to tear down the Moran plant and they're going to put a red steel frame that is the facade of what the Moran plant was. Millions of dollars, but we can't fix our sewage problem.
Wow.
Yes, you're welcome, Vermont.
Exactly.
Wow.
We
Excuse
love
me.
Burlington.
Excuse
Is that other
Sorry.
other Vermont?
My-
I have to ask this question. Otherwise, I'm going to get killed by Campaign
Okay,
for Vermont.
okay.
On ethics.
Yeah.
What do you think about where Vermont should be with the topic of ethics? And not just the state house. It's in the state government as well.
Yeah, great question. I was shocked when you told me that there was no sort of ethics framework for our legislators.
Right.
I don't even understand that. When you said it, my brain just went, how?
When the exempts sign on ethics, how many stocks do you have and this? Do I own
Yeah.
stocks in Sun Common?
Yeah.
You were talking about that.
Yeah.
But that's when you're an exempt. But I don't know if the legislature doesn't sign anything like that.
Yeah, I think that if you are part of a committee or you're voting on something, you should at least have to disclose what your special interest
Right,
is or
right.
why it matters to you. And I mean, that almost feels like I want to be careful here how I talk, right? Because I'm a landlord. I don't think I should necessarily have to recuse myself from everything that relates to landlords. But there should at least be a place where if there is a suspected ethics violation, there should be like some framework.
Right.
There should be a place where people can report an ethics violation. You should have to disclose things that your owner's in or whatever. Absolutely. And I don't know how you pass any kind of legislation that doesn't then provide an enforcement
Right.
conversation.
Yep.
Like you have to, what's the point of the law if there's no way to enforce it?
Exactly.
Then it's just a wish.
What they've been looking
not
at
a
has
law.
no teeth whatsoever, none. And Campaign for Vermont and Vote for Vermont has worked very hard over the years to get something.
Yeah.
Because I think there were 2 states that didn't have anything. Of course, we were one of them. I forget the other one. Can you imagine?
I
Because
would-
their thing is, it's Vermont, everybody knows everybody, but that's not true
Oh my
anymore.
God, no. And let me just say, Pat, on that note, I was shocked at how dirty local politics is for
Yeah,
that reason.
right.
I'm like, you're going to see me at the grocery store.
Right. Don't you care what I...
Our families know each other, and you're going to lie like that? I mean,
If you're talking Burlington, that's another whole...
my God.
That would be another whole show.
so
Speaking of the Ethics Commission, I do know that the Middletown Springs, I think it is, that whole problem, or Paulet, with what is going on with the recount for
Oh, really?
Zuckerman and everything, that apparently, someone told me today that they will be reporting that to the Vermont Ethics Commission.
Oh, good. But the Ethics Commission, they should know, can't do anything. They may be able to pass it on to Jim Condos for
Right.
violations, but...
And he may hand it back to
it's
them,
scary.
and who knows?
Yeah, right.
So I would really be interested to
Good.
talk more about that moving
Thank you.
forward.
We
and
will pass
when
your
I,
name on.
when I win.
Yes, when you win. Well, Larry Nevins has presented, he's the head of the
Yeah.
Ethics Commission.
Oh, good.
He's presented a very detailed, here's what we should put in law. And it's a no-brainer, but for some it is. So what can you do?
Yep.
But
Yep.
anyway, so we don't have too much time. Can you tell us, in the time that we have left, why you would be the best candidate for the position and why they should vote for you?
Yeah. Because I have been on both sides of so many of these questions. You know, I'm a landlord, but I've also dealt with housing discrimination. I'm a business owner, but I've also been an employee. I am a tenant and a landlord. You know, all of these things that we as legislators are voting on impact all of the things that we do as legislators impacts your life. It impacts your life. It impacts his life. It impacts everyone's life. And I think that the more experience a person has had, the better they are able to understand the issues that are coming before them. You know, if you've never been a landlord, if you've never had to suffer, if you've never had to struggle, if you've never been bullied, if you've never been discriminated against, if you've never had to declare bankruptcy, if you've never committed a crime, if you've never been arrested, if you've never been fill in the blank,
Right.
victim of a crime,
Right.
Whatever, if you've never experienced life, how do you begin to empathize with the people
Right,
that
right.
you're representing?
Right.
And more importantly, probably the most important thing that I think is that I don't believe that I'm being elected to lead people. I believe I'm being elected to represent people. You know, we have a representative republic,
Right.
and we're all responsible for participating. And I don't believe it's my responsibility to tell you how to live your life and what is best for you. I believe it's my responsibility to set up a circumstance for you to have the best possible chance to win at whatever it is you choose to do. And that, I think, sets me apart from all of my competition.
We have some in the legislature who feel they are there to do the best they think for everybody. And they've actually said it, that they don't understand, they, the people, don't understand. We should do X because they don't understand,
Yep.
right?
That's right.
Guy's been up there more than I have these days, and they say it. Or because we can. We challenged them on something one time in the State House, and the leadership looked at me and said, because we can. They've got the vote, so they can do anything they want. Serious.
We're going to charge you 10 cents for those bags,
Right,
because if we
exactly.
charged you 1 cent or it was free, you wouldn't do it. So, you know, it's a lot of control going on.
Yeah, punitive measures
Yeah.
to try to manage your behavior.
Right.
Well, folks, we have run out of time, and I want to thank you for being here, Ericka. Thank you very much. Guy, thank you for being here to help co-host, and thank you all for listening in. We will see you next week, and in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.